Kangaroot has been supporting organizations for 15 years in the open source world. So what we do today is we've brought together IBM, Red Hat, Enterprise DB, because they're important partners of ours, but they also showcase the status of where open source is today, how innovative it has become, but also how far along they have come in those 15 years. For us, it's important to showcase that we can help organizations to find their way in the open source world, how to implement things, and which products and projects are important and usable, because there's a lot of stuff out there. Yeah.
Well, last year, IBM committed a second $1 billion to Linux, this time specifically to Power Linux. Really focused on ecosystem, focused on growing out the applications that are available on Power Linux. That begins with tooling, that begins with places like porting centers, continues with a cloud environment, our Power Development Platform and Power Development Cloud, where ISVs and third parties can work on porting their software to bring it over to Linux on Power systems. Becomes very important because as the industry moves forward, having those emerging applications, those new technologies, the exciting things that are occurring in open source today, having those available on Power systems enables customers to make their decision about the platform right up front as they're working with the new technologies, new platforms. And so this $1 billion is focused on our ecosystem and is really setting up Power to be open, be competitive in this emerging environment.
I think open source is inevitable. It's happening in the marketplace. More and more large enterprises are adopting open source technology and using it for more mission critical environments. I think a very important reason behind that is the fact that it's not a vendor developing software, it's the market developing software. It's all software that's developed in communities, coming into enterprise. So it's really very much today very innovative, and therefore much of a factor for enterprises to consider. The community is key. I mean, we look at community-driven software development. As said, any software, any innovation takes place in the community. The role Red Hat plays in there is basically connecting the community with the enterprise and vice versa. Being a catalyst for those enterprises for technology coming from the community. So if you look at what happens in the community, there's a lot of projects out of which products derive. And we don't really interfere. We contribute, we sponsor, but we don't really tell the community what to do. It's the market developing. So we take out technology out of this community. We do some hardening on it, so certification against hardware, software, databases, etc. We provide training, support 24/7 around the world for technology coming out of the community, but we leave the innovation part to the community. So if you look at, for example, OpenStack, it's built from a lot of components that allow companies to provide an infrastructure as a service. All these components play an important role, so there's networking, storage, deployment monitoring, etc. But we stick to what the community comes out with. So you see some companies taking OpenStack, integrating the tools, etc. We don't do that. We leave it as is, native, as it comes from the community, in order to be able to actually follow the development path the community is following.
Yeah, Postgres is maybe not the newest one, but it's the number 4 database deployed. And actually, if you look at Gartner, it's actually the only database that's actually in the Challenger quadrant already. Also with JSON support, we're moving really close to like technologies like MongoDB and everything. It's a $30 billion market now, the database market. It's like 3 times bigger than all the other markets. So. And at the end, people are doing transactions, and the NoSQL database are not mature enough at the moment now to cope with transactions that you will do like on a relational level. And that's why we see like a massive growth of the Postgres database at the moment. in banks, in telcos, in governments, the Flemish government, that they're doing transactional systems and they're looking for an alternative for the really high cost proprietary databases at the moment that there are now. So it's very cost driven, but also with the engagement of like large companies of IBM supporting us. Also the technology has been exploding for the past 2 years, like better ways of asynchronous replication, multi-master replication, with tooling, builds, certifications on many parts of the hardware. So it's a very challenging time at the moment for us, and so it's nice to be at that.
What we've seen in the past 10, 15 years is that open source has always played a catch-up game. Like, we have this too in open source, we have this too in open source. Since a couple of years that has turned over completely, where the innovation is happening in open source. We're being asked by customers what this new stuff is about, how to implement it, what are best practices and stuff like that. So we see that the open source market has become at the forefront of where IT is going. We can showcase to people that all the traditional stuff they already have in place can be replaced by open source stuff. But the new things are always happening in open source. And we see that basically open source is biting away at the market share of traditional closed source software. And all the new stuff is happening in open source.
Well, I think it's a very exciting time today in open source technology. You know, just 2-3 years ago, we were talking about Watson winning Jeopardy, and few people realized that at the heart of Watson was this thing called Hadoop. Today, Hadoop we talk about in the context of big data. And so Hadoop really becomes that first sort of emerging new technology. Grew up on Linux. We've proven it does well on Power Systems with the whole Watson solutions and our healthcare initiatives around Watson today. But it doesn't stop there. Hadoop was sort of the beginning of something other than traditional web serving and infrastructure that Linux was of course very good at. We have a whole emerging set of applications that customers are beginning to evaluate for deployments in their enterprises. Whether it's MongoDB, whether it's Redis, all the rest of the NoSQL databases, as well as the relationship Power has with Enterprise DB and the traditional transactional workloads that Postgres allows us to do as well. You have Postgres, you have Hadoop, you have these emerging workloads. Somebody's going to create the next killer app. And so this future in open source technology is going to be built on open languages that Linux supports, going to probably be built around some of this new middleware that we've described, and do something that we have yet to think of. It's kind of difficult to know where it ends up, but I think it's going to be exciting, and it's going to be cool, and it's going to be open when it gets done. And our hope with the Open Power Foundation as well is that we open up even new hardware solutions in the definition of what open is, as our partners Google, Tyan, NVIDIA, Mellanox are all committed to innovating around power processors in new and exciting form factors and solutions. So open hardware, open software, next set of great ideas, it's gonna be fun.
So after we had a big bang with Linux, with the operating systems, and then we saw in the middleware market with JBoss replacing a lot of Oracle, IBM proprietary technology. We think that the database is the third one that will fall open to open source based technology. So we can also see it on the number of downloads and on the number of customers that we are getting on board. Yeah, I think this will be the next one that will fall open to open source. It will be a very exciting time. It's coming 3 years to see which ones will be the leading ones and which one will be emerging ones. At the moment, companies that do transactions, you see there's a large growth for Postgres. being supported by the individual analysts. So it's a nice thing to see.
It's hard to say. We don't really have a roadmap. It's the market deciding, it's the community deciding, which basically is the power behind software coming from the communities. So, but I see some trends. So basically what you see is decoupling from different layers. Technology being more and more independent of other areas. You see that with virtualization for starters. Virtualization kind of decouples hardware from anything that's running on top of that hardware. You see that in different layers going on today. So yeah, I think that's a big trend, but where it's really going, we don't know. We'll have to see. It's the community deciding. So we can have a look into the next year maybe. You see where the community is going and what they're doing, but yeah, we have no idea where it will end. It's the market deciding.